One question that we've been thinking about a lot is whether or not we should be supporting solar radiation management. And that's a very complex question. One of the things that we know for sure is that we'd have to do a lot of testing on solar radiation management, particularly stratospheric aerosols, if we were to ensure that the risks were reasonable risks. And because this type of geoengineering has the potential to impact the entire globe, we want to make sure that the risks are manageable. So one of the studies that recently came out, which actually Keith is a co-author of, is that we probably need at least 20 to maybe 30 years of testing to even know if it's safe enough to deploy. So given that type of time frame, one of the questions I often ask is that the best use of resources? Because research and development funds are limited and we have to make decisions. So one of my arguments is, although we might want to support some lab studies, which would be not inexpensive but nonetheless manageable, maybe what we want to do is put our time into thinking about alternatives, everything from putting more resources into alternative technologies, but in particular into an arena that just has been understudied, which is how do we affect behavioral change? Because if we could affect behavioral change and get more people to start to change the way they live in terms of consumption, in terms of energy intensity, we could have another solution to the problem. One of my concerns would be that we actually are exploring all the alternatives, which doesn't mean not doing some modeling and lab studies of solar radiation management, but to be very careful to make sure that we're doing other types of research and only deploying solar radiation management in an arena where we're reasonably sure that it's going to be reasonably safe and that we have good reason to deploy it. This is an activity that if we start to deploy it or even test it in large, sub-deployment levels, has the potential to impact everyone, everywhere. And the research, the modeling research we have right now is that not everyone will be impacted in the same way. So one of the biggest challenges is how we make this decision in a way that's just and fair to all who are potentially impacted. So there's a huge governance and decision-making process that has to happen. One that's at least potentially as large as what's happening right now in the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Given that solar radiation management and other types of geoengineering are clearly on the table and are being examined, I think one of the best models is to learn from the Human Genome Project, in which there was a decision right from the beginning to do work on the Human Genome Project from a scientific and technological perspective, always alongside of research on the ethical, legal, and social dimensions of the Human Genome Project. That was a model that was put in place quite a few decades ago, but I think we can learn from that model and adapt it to this particular type of research where we literally have ethicists, social scientists working in tandem with teams of scientists and engineers who are exploring solar radiation management. So for example, when someone does a climate model or looks at a model of solar radiation management, one always has to make a decision about what objective are we going to target in this model. And each decision about which objective we target in the model, but also different particular decisions that are made within the model, such as how to balance temperature and precipitation, are normative decisions. Decisions in which a value decision about what is going to be weighted more important than something else, or are they going to be weighted equally, is being made. And it's helpful to have good science to make sure that the normative questions are transparent and are being examined for their implications. So that would be the model that I would advocate as the National Science Foundation or the Department of Energy starts to fund solar radiation management, that they also fund what we call an ELSI program, an ethical, legal, and social implications program, that literally links those types of research with attention to those issues.